Hello friends, I'm Danielle from the Garden Nextdoor. Welcome, and today we're talking all about perennials. I'm going to be sharing my top 7 tips for planting perennials and making sure that they're successful. This is going to save you time, money, and potentially a heartache of a dying plant. I've learned so many lessons in my garden and I love to share them with you every week. Perennials are an investment. Plant them once and you'll have the benefit year over year. But there are things you can do to actually make that not happen. Now, when you get them in the ground, there are a lot of things that we're going to talk about you need to do from the beginning to make sure that there's a successful start to perennial. But then every year there are things that you need to do to make sure that it continues to grow successfully. Perennials are not just a plant that you can plop in the ground and wish for the best, but they are going to take some time, effort, and a little bit of elbow grease to make sure that they have success year over year, and we're going to break it down. Right now, we're heading into the orchard to talk about the first tip, which is planting your perennials in the right spot from the beginning. Now, full sun here in zone 7 is not the same as full sun in, say, New England. So you definitely want to check the perennial that you're planting and see what it actually requires in regards to its sun requirements. Welcome to our orchard, and we're going to talk about the first tip, which is making sure that you're planting your perennials in the right spot for their needs. Now, whenever you buy a seed pack or you get your little seed plant, it has the amount of hours of sun that it needs. And this is going to be the same with any of your perennials. There's going to be partial sun, full sun, and a shade variety of perennials that you can be looking into. For the most part, I'd say a lot of your fruiting items are going to require full sun. Full sun is a lot different in zone 7 than, say, what it would be like in New England. So definitely make sure that the variety of plant that you're getting is going to be best for your zone as well. Now, our orchard is thriving because all of this is in the sun for a good amount of day. Now, where I'm standing right now, this is where we had started one of our first rows originally, and there's just too much shade right here. Now, what you want to do when you're picking your spot is before you actually put your plant there, you want to check what the sun's going to be like in the morning, in the afternoon, and towards the latter part of the day. So is the sun not here all the time? Now, when we checked this, when we were planting ours, it was later in the day and there was more sun right here because of the way it shifted in the sky. We didn't really think about the fact that this was getting shade for most of the day. So the cherry trees that we had planted here epically failed because they weren't getting the amount of sun that they required. So what you want to do is definitely check the sun throughout the day before planting any of your plants so that you know it's going to get the right amount of sun that it needs to thrive. Behind me is the sun for most of the day for the actual plants that we have in our orchard. So we do kind of have a gap here in our first row in order to make up for the needs of our plants. The next thing to think about before you actually get your plants in the ground is the soil that they're going to be having. Now, zone 7 is very well known for having a clay-like soil, which is not always ideal for some of these trees. So what we like to do is build a nice, large hole around our perennial trees, and then we actually amend the soil within it. So we dig all of this up, remove all of the grass from it, all of the weeds, anything like that, dig a nice big deep hole, and then we'll put some nice nutrient compost in. You can put some nice soils that are going to be best for the type of perennial that you have. So if you're going to be doing a fruiting tree or a bush or something like that, definitely read some of the labels on some of the compost and make sure that you're getting that in. Now, if you are going to be making your own compost, you can also be taking that in as well. Just make sure that it's nice and nutrient. And then when you actually get your tree in, make sure that you spread out the ball of the tree. So those roots that are in it, when you get the bucket, you want to spread them out so that they can start to weave out into the ground. Now, there are a lot of things that you can be cautious of when you are actually getting something like a fruit tree because it's had a few years to grow in that pot. There are things that you might want to look for, which we can definitely talk about another time, how to find the best perennial trees. But once you get that in, Then you're gonna cover it in the nice compostable soil. Mix in some of your soil as well so it has a nice combination. And then we wanna make sure that we are mulching on top, which brings me to tip number 3, and that is providing a nice mulching layer. We go out all the way, like I said, we create this nice hole for our tree and we go all the way out to the tree line of our perennials. Now you can also just go out like a foot or 2 of any of your bushes that you're planting, but you want to make sure that you're creating a nice space that's getting mulched. This way, the mulch, and we use a wood chip mulch, you can also use bark mulch, you can use straw, you can use whatever type of mulch you want, but I like to use a nice wood chip mulch here. And we will do this every fall, so I actually need to remulch right now. And this is going to do a few things. First off, it is going to protect the nutrients in the soil from the burning heat of the sun. Next, it's going to lock in moisture. So these little wood chips are going to absorb a lot more moisture than the soil will, and it's going to keep it in. It's also going to make sure that when it does rain, that it doesn't get burnt off all that moisture. And then third thing, because we're in zone 7, we do still have a cold winter. So this is also going to protect the roots and keep them warmer as we get snow and just colder temperatures. When you are mulching, you do want to make sure that you are not covering the root ball of your tree. This is usually a little knot, especially in fruit trees. They're usually going to take one type of tree and graft into it, your fruit tree. So you'll usually see that knot. Do not dig that into the ground. Make sure that that is nicely above. This is going to make sure that it does not rot in the ground. Now, when you buy your trees from big box stores, sometimes that is actually covered already in the soil. So just make sure that when you're buying your plants, you are looking into that and you're making sure that isn't already covered when you're buying your plant. And if it is, one, you can just kind of like dig it off, still get the tree if it's a good tree, but make sure that you're not putting that in the ground once you get it into your ground. Another thing to think about is the spacing that your perennials will need. Now, when you are getting perennials in the ground, maybe it's perennial herbs, maybe it's blueberries, raspberries, flowers, or orchard trees, they have a height that they're going to grow to. So when you get your plant, take a look at that label that's on it at the store and see what the maturing size is going to be. There are options for dwarf-sized or smaller sized. There's smaller dwarf trees and there are larger ones that are going to be up to 30 feet high. Make sure that you're also spacing everything with enough space to grow. When you get it in the ground, it's going to be a much different size in a couple of years, and your perennials, you really do want to keep growing bigger and bigger. We actually take a tape measure and we'll measure out the distance. Now, when we planted our orchard here, we measured out for all of the first rows, and then we did that sideways as well so that we could fit in all of our trees, and we made sure that their mature size did still allow for them to have space to grow. And you want to keep this in mind. If you're getting your plants in now, I suggest that you think about maybe what it will look like if you have annuals in between. So especially things with like flowering perennials or bushes, you might want to actually get them in and kind of think about what it will look like with annuals. So it doesn't need to be that filled up with perennials. You can also scatter annuals in between, and that will provide enough spacing for the long-term success of your perennial. One really great example of this is our hydrangea bushes along our house. Now, these are pretty big. Honestly, I could go up to them. Let's see. I'm like 5 foot and they're basically 5 foot high right now. And I cut them down in the fall to around 2 feet high. So we made sure to really space these out. If we put them closer together, they really wouldn't be that successful and we could really inhibit their growth. So I definitely suggest looking at the maturing size of your plant so you know exactly what it's going to be and you plan accordingly for that. So don't just plan for right now, plan for what it's going to be like when it's fully mature. I'm sure you know the ad age saying that patience is a virtue, and this is the same with perennials. Perennials are really going to take around 3 years to start growing. Right now, I'm walking through my green giant rose at the edge of our property, and some of these ones we got in around 2 years ago. Well, these ones we got in a lot earlier. And the old phrase in perennial growth is year 1, they sleep. Year 2, they creep. And year 3, they leap. These are gigantic. They're so big. Now, this is a fast growing perennial tree, evergreen tree. So they've really leaped, but make sure that you're patient with your perennials. As long as you're doing these tips, you are making sure to get them in an area that they want to live in. You're spacing them out accordingly. You're mulching and watering, especially in those beginning years, then they will be very successful. They're going to take time. They need to get their plants in, understand the new area, root down, and then they'll focus on some of that outward growth. So patience is going to be really important with perennial planting. Number 6 is actually going to include some pruning shears. Deadheading and dividing plants is essential to perennials. You might think that perennials can just go in the ground and then they come back every year, but that is not true. If your perennials are going to be successful and you want to have much more blooms and growth, then you need to play a part in it as well. Things like deadheading, which is actually cutting off the blooms, it means that you're going to get more blooms on your plants, like salvia, for example. At the end of the season, you want to make sure to prune them back so that you're getting a nice additional growth. Now, sometimes you can do this in the fall. You can also do this in the spring. I'm a very big fall pruner, which means once everything's kind of died back and everything's kind of dead on the plant, then I will prune back. This is great because it's going to enable more growth. So things like grapes, certain types of grapes, and figs, they actually only are going to grow fruits on the newer branches. So if you aren't pruning them, then you're going to have far less of a yield than if you do prune them every year. And then what you do want to also think about is dividing. Things like hostas are going to actually create more root balls within the ground. And if you don't go in and divide them out, then they're going to overcrowd themselves. So this is going to do a few things. You can actually go in, divide out the balls. So around fall, around this time of year, once the plants kind of died back, you can go in, undig their roots, and then divide them out. You can plant them next to each other. So like give them enough space and plant them around so it's growing your growth. You don't have to buy more. You can share some of those roots with friends. You can sell them, but you're actually getting free plants from your plant, and you're helping the longevity of your plant by making sure that it has enough space. There are so many beautiful perennial flowers that are going to do this for you. We actually just dug up a lot of our tulips recently and spread those out, and it's like one tulip bulb can make so many other ones, and then you can plant them all around your property and get free tulips. An amazing tactic to spreading the glory of your perennials and also helping them thrive for years to come. And the last tip, number 7, is not all perennials are worth it. Not all of them are created equal. Some perennials might actually be weeds in disguise. What do I mean? Things like mint, for example, or creeping Charlie. They might look really cute in the pot. The idea of having fresh mint every day is amazing, but they spread like wildfire. I've even found just a single mint leaf drop down, and now it can spread over. My parents actually had this happen. It spread over an entire hill, and they had mint just so invasive, just taking over. So if you have plants that might be creeping, that might spread a lot, make sure that they're contained in pots or some type of casing, because they will spread like crazy, and make sure that you don't have any hangover, because they'll also drop down and get to the ground. But think about some plants that maybe aren't going to spread as much. Things like lavender. They'll come back, but they're not going to spread everywhere. in your property. Some beautiful items that you can get are things like echinacea, daylilies, lavender, things that are going to look beautiful, attract pollinators, and make your life easier, not harder. These are just 7 of my perennial tips. We absolutely love perennials in our garden. We have so many. We're trying to make our garden more into a fruit forest, which is something that continues to just grow and more of a regenerative style of gardening. And perennials play a key role in that. We need some of the pollinators that are going to come back year and year over again, some things to make our property look beautiful, and some fruiting items that we can reap the benefits of for years to come and be making just a generational space for gardening and harvesting. These are some tips that I have. I'd love to hear what you think down below. If you found this video helpful, give us a like, subscribe, and we'll see you guys again next time. Thank you. Bye.